Hello, everyone. Welcome to Barca News. It is June 6, 2025, and Javier Tebas, the president of La Liga, has made some shocking statements confirming what we all knew already, which is that the guy is a total moron. Also, Clement Lenglet is nearing his exit out of Barcelona. And finally, Pablo Torre has made some statements revealing his frustrations with Hansi Flick. We have a lot to discuss. So let's begin. Hello, everyone. Welcome to the channel. My name is Mo. This is the Barca News live podcast, which is on every Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays, where not only we discuss Barcelona news, but where I also get to interact with you lovely people in the chat section by reading your comments, answering your questions, and getting that discussion going. For those of you who will be watching when the podcast ends, I will be putting timestamps in the description and chapters in the timeline in case you do want to skip through the discussion and get straight into the news. And of course, speaking of podcasts, don't forget, starting June 14th, there will be a weekly podcast every Saturday with channel members only, where it's going to be more of a hangout. Just me, you guys, talking about whatever you guys want, whether it's Barcelona, other teams, other sports, anything you guys want to talk about. That's what we're going to do. It's just going to be some, people hanging out on the weekend, but doing it, of course, virtually, kind of like during the pandemic or the quarantine, those good old days of the quarantine, I guess, if you want to put silver lining. But anyways, having said all that, make sure to hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, drop a comment. If you are looking for any Barcelona jerseys or merchandise, make sure to Goal Kits, Get Bag, or Fanatics. And if you are looking to place any sports bets, make sure to bet us. All links are down below in the description. Click on them. You get access to some pretty cool deals and offers, courtesy of Barca News. All right, let's begin with the news. And as always, the first segment of this podcast is composed of several bits of news combined together for the sake of brevity. Starting with that Barcelona have received a lucrative offer to play in Casablanca, Morocco during this summer. Now, as you know, during this summer, we have the Club World Cup, where the participating clubs will receive 50 billion euros each just for participating. You make more money as you advance through the competition. And since Barcelona will miss out on this competition, they've been looking for ways to, make their own money through friendly matches. Of course, Barcelona will be participating in a Asia preseason tour where they're going to play 2 matches in Korea, 1 match in Japan. And now they have received an offer to play a friendly match in Casablanca, Morocco on July 20th. Now, we don't know what the exact figures are, how much Barcelona are being offered to play that match, but it's being reported that the final decision will be made by Hansi Flick. So Flick is the one who's going to decide whether Barcelona play in Morocco or not. Because, of course, on one hand, it's great to play these friendly matches. You make some money. You can use to sign players or register players. But on the other hand, we still have to think about the player's health because, traveling, that takes a lot of a player. Being in an airplane, high pressure, that affects your recovery. Also playing all these matches during the summer. You don't want the player starting the season already fatigued and tired, right? So Hansi Flick will have the final say on whether Barcelona play in Morocco or not. Now, the preseason training will start on July 13th. That's when the players will report to medical testing. And the match will be on July 20th, which, by the way, Barcelona Flick was already planning to play a match on that day, whether an internal match between, Barcelona players, 11 versus 11, or against a local side. I don't know if you guys remember this, but last preseason, Hansi Flick did the same thing where Barcelona played against, I can't remember if it was like a 3rd division or a 4th division team from Catalonia. I can't remember the team's name, but it was kind of like, a match against a local team. So Flick was already planning on Barcelona playing a match on July 20th, whether against a local side or within the club. But now he will have to decide whether Barcelona go to play in Morocco or not, because after all, you do have to take that trip. Now, it's not as far as a trip as going to Korea and Japan, but nonetheless, it is a trip. Now, on to the next bit of news, and this one is huge. It's huge. So hold on to clutch your pearls if you're an old Southern lady, because, ladies and gentlemen, Coutinho has won Best Player of the Season in 2024-2025. best player of La Liga season 2024-2025 after the spectacular season that the Brazilian has had, where he scored 18 goals and provided 11 assists in La Liga alone. Of course, he also scored 13 goals and provided 9 assists in the Champions League. In the Champions League, he ended up being a top goal scorer and a top assist provider. And in all competitions, he scored 34 goals and provided 25 assists. Again, 34 goals in 25 assists. That's the 59 goal contribution for Coutinho during this past season, which just shows the amazing season that he's had. And people were like, "No, Raphinha's so great. He scored 10 goals under Xabi." I'm like, seriously? No, this is amazing. Not the 10 goals you guys were bragging about. Now, of course, the Champions League goals, Copa del Rey, all that doesn't count towards this award because this is just for La Liga season. But this is just to highlight how great the Brazilian did. Again, 18 goals and 11 assists in La Liga alone, winning him player of the 2024-2025 season. Of course, a few days ago, I reported that Flick had won Coach of the Year or Coach of the Season. Now, Raphinha, player of the season. And there's more. There's more because Barcelona are cleaning house because Lamine Yamal has won the best under 23 player of the 2024-2025 season, which again just highlights the total dominance of Barcelona. Lamine, of course, scoring 9 goals and providing 13 assists in La Liga. And in all competitions, he scored 18 goals and provided 25 assists at 17 years old. Lamine is a child, scoring 18 goals and providing 25 assists in all competitions. Again, all these numbers and all comps don't count. Only the Liga numbers, but this is, again, just to highlight the total dominance of a 17-year-old Lamine Yamal. Not even Messi or Penaldo were performing this well at this age. This guy is an absolute blessing and an absolute gift, not just to us Barcelona fans, but to any football fan, because watching Lamine Yamal is an absolute joy. Now, the last bit of news of this first segment is that West Ham have confirmed officially through their official webpage and social media outlets that they have indeed paid 40 million euros to Nice for the signing of Jean-Claire Todibo. And this, of course, confirms the news that I brought to you a few days ago, and that is that Barcelona will make 8 million euros off the sale of Todibo because Barcelona still owned 20% of the rights of Todibo. So, of course, 20% of 40 million that West Ham paid. That's 8 million that Barcelona will pocket, which, by the way, overall, the Todibo operation was pretty good. Now, it's unfortunate he didn't work out as a player because when Barcelona signed him, Todibo was very up-and-coming, promising center back. Unfortunately, when he arrived to Barcelona, he opted out for the party, for the nightlife. I mean, he himself admitted this, by the way. I'm not making anything up. So he didn't work out as far as that with the discipline. But overall, the operation itself worked out really well because let's break down the numbers. Barcelona signed Todibo for 1 million euros. They offloaded him to Nice for 8.5 million euros. So right there, Barcelona made 7.5 in profits. But they also made 3.5 million euros when they loaned him to Schalke and to Benfica. 3.5 million euros in loan fees, plus the 8.5 when they offload him to Nice. That puts us at, what is it? That's 12 million euros, right? And now they just made another 8 million euros off his transfer to West Ham. So they paid 1 million, they made 20. That's 19 million euro in profit. Not a bad operation whatsoever, which is a nice change, given that Barcelona are always losing money left and right on operations. In this one, we actually made some pretty good money. And who says Barcelona are not a selling club? I'm just kidding. Barcelona are not a selling club. Anyways, let's do the comment section, and then we are going to talk about Javier Tebas, because La Liga president has gone out of his way to prove once again for any of his doubters that he truly is a moron. So if you had, for some reason, changed your opinion, and all of a sudden started thinking, you know what, Tebas is a smart guy. Tebas wanted to remind you, hey, man, don't think that. Don't change your mind. I'm still a moron. Here is the proof. We're going to talk about that proof that Tebas just presented us with. Not the Gamer says, hey, Mo, just making sure Barca won't play. I think that's what you meant to say. rent paying, not paying, are not paying, are not paying. That's what you try. Sure, not paying 85 mil for Luis Diaz, right? For reals though, who will be Frankie's new agent? So it's technically is still Ali Durson. Frankie has asked his lawyer to terminate the contract, but of course, terminating contracts is not an easy thing. And this, this is me telling you as a lawyer, because contracts are there to protect both parties who engage in, right? You negotiate with that party, you say, I want this, he says, I want that, you agreed on your terms, you put it in writing, and that is supposed to protect both of you. It's supposed to protect what you wanted out of this deal, it's supposed to protect what the other party wanted out of this deal too. So breaking contract is a very difficult thing. I don't know how it works in Spain, but in the US, courts do not like to alter contracts. They're kind of like, hey, you agreed to it, it's your problem, unless, of course, something illegal happened in the formation of the contract. For example, the person was a minor. You can't reach a contract with a minor. The person was not all there mentally, or if there was some kind of coercion or fraud, or you forced the person. Something like that would have to happen in order for the courts to touch the contract. But overall, courts are like, yo, I don't want to mess with this because you guys agreed to that. If one of you doesn't like the terms, that's not my problem. You should have done a better job in negotiating when you wrote the contract. So a very difficult process. So it's going to take some time, I'm sure. But for now, it is Ali Durson. I mean, plus that shouldn't stop Frankie from negotiating because, while that's happening, he could still be like, all right, Ali Durson, you know what? Stay at home. I'm going to go talk to Barca. I'll deal with this myself. Morgan says, hey, Mo, stayed up for your live once more. Bring all that Barca news and don't forget to hit the like. Thank you, my friend. Thank you for staying up late. And yes, please don't forget to hit the like button. The Matrix says, what BS has Tebas said this time? Oh, you're going to laugh. You're going to laugh. You're going to want to hear this. You're going to want to hear this. Because again, Tebas really went out of his way to remind us, hey, guys, I'm still here. I'm still an idiot. I'm still stupid. Don't forget that I am an idiot. Gilliard says, Pablo Torre did deserve minutes. We should just sell him and put buyback clause in it. We'll talk about Pablo Torre in a little bit. I don't want to get ahead of myself. And let's see. Ralph says, Tebas might have hit his head on the floor when he was a kid, and I'm sure the kid who pushed him was a Barca fan. That's why he dislikes. But yeah, I mean, I don't think it was just one time that he hit his head. I think it was a bunch of, maybe it was his mom. Maybe his mom was a Barca fan and she continuously dropped him on his head. So when he grew up, he was like, Mom, what the hell? I'm an idiot because of you. And you're a Barca fan. So I hate Barca fans. So, Mantamanti says, Mo, who is better MMA? You or Khabib? Me, bro, all day. Just kidding. Khabib is probably the, and this might be controversial because some people might have a different opinion, but to me, Khabib is the GOAT of MMA. I think a lot of people don't give him his flowers because he's more of a grappling guy. And people don't like to see grappling because I get it. To someone who doesn't grapple, it's pretty boring to watch. Two dudes on the floor. But grappling is an incredibly, incredibly difficult art to master because grappling is all about angles, is all about millimeters, fractions of an inch. I mean, it's all about 1 little millimeter to the right or 1 millimeter to the left could be the difference between you submitting the other guy or the other guy submitting you, right? It's a very difficult sport. It takes a lot of, not just strength, by the way, grappling. I mean, 5 minutes of grappling is like 100 minutes of striking. Like, not only does it take incredible strength and stamina, but it takes a lot of intelligence. And for people who don't grapple, who don't know what the hell they're seeing when they see two dudes hugging it out on the floor, to them it's boring, right? They just want to see two guys beating the shit out of each other, punching each other in the face, blood everywhere, broken bones. That's what they want to see, right? So most people don't really understand what they're watching when they're seeing two dudes grapple. So I think that's why Khabib doesn't really get his flowers. But to me, he is the greatest MMA fighter because his grappling game is like no other. Like he is the GOAT. Let's see. Bext. God damn it. Can't even read anymore. Says, Mo, I saw that Barca reconsiders Nico because of all the fans. Any truth to that? No. So far, Barcelona Deco and Laporta still have their heads pretty far up their ass. I mean, at this point, their heads is back on top of their shoulders, but not because they took it out of their ass, but because they shoved it so far up their ass that it went all the way up and back in its place. Because they still insisting that they don't want to sign Nico because, oh no, he rejected us. How are we going to go after a guy who rejected us? It's like some scorned 13-year-old girl who some guy decides not to ask her for prom, and then he comes back and asks her for prom, and he's like, no, I can't say because you rejected me the first time. It's like, get your heads out of your fucking asses. Shin says, just popped in to see what we're really all offended by today. Let's do this. I like it. Speaking of, let's talk about Tebas, because we have to talk about Tebas. Because as I said before, the comment section, in case people who skipped the comment section, I have to say this again. Today, Javier Tebas decided to remind all of us what a moron he is. He said, hey guys, in case you forgot, or in case you changed your minds and opinions and started thinking that I was somewhat smart, let me remind you that you are wrong. I am not smart. I'm an idiot. And here is why. Now, Javier Tebas was asked about the Ballon d'Or. Who should win it? I don't know why people even ask this guy questions. Like, honestly, this is on the reporter as much as it is on Tebas. Because why would you ask Tebas any questions? I mean, we already know this guy has the mental capacity of a rock. But anyways, this is what Javier Tebas had to say. Embrace yourself, because you are gonna laugh. If you haven't peed, make sure you go pee before you read this, because you might pee yourself. But Tebas says it should be between Lamine Yamal or Vinicius, okay? It should be between Lamine Yamal or Vinicius. Vinicius hasn't had a super season, but we mustn't forget that he was very good at the beginning. Winning the Ballon d'Or is a season-long achievement. Okay, remember this, right? He's talking about Vinicius had a good start to the season, but then he says the Ballon d'Or is the full season. And he still has a few international matches and the Club World Cup left. Those two players are playing in Spain. It should be between Lamine Yamal or Vinicius. Where do I even begin with this? I mean, look, I understand. Let's break it down, okay? I understand he is the president of La Liga, so of course he wants to promote La Liga, and it's in his best interest that a player from La Liga wins it, right? Because technically the guy who wins the Ballon d'Or is the best in the world, and if the best in the world is playing in your league, that's really good for your league, because that brings in more TV viewership, sponsorships, money, etc., etc., etc. So I understand that he wants to, say it should be between two La Liga players. I get that. I get why he would exclude Dembele or Doué or whomever, right? Because he wants to make it about La Liga. I get it. Up until to this point, I understand his point of view. But then he says between Lamine and Vinicius. What? Lamine and Vinicius, okay? Look, I understand had he said Lamine and Mbappe, or Mbappe, as we agreed we were going to call him yesterday, because he is the new king of penalties. But I get if he had said between Lamine and Mbappe. I mean, I still don't agree with that, because we've seen Lamine run circles around Mbappe all season. He's beating them 6 times in a row in the semifinals of the Euro, semifinals of the Nations League, and 4 Clasico matches in a row. So I don't agree with it, but it makes more sense to say Lamine or Mbappe, because after all, Mbappe was the best performing player of Real Madrid. He ended up being a top scorer of La Liga. So that makes more sense. Again, I don't agree with it, but it makes a lot more sense to say Lamine and Mbappe versus Lamine and Vinicius. What? But it gets worse. It gets worse, because look at his statements again, okay? And I'll make this bigger. He says, oh, I was supposed to make it bigger. I made it disappear. Here we go. He says, we mustn't forget that he was very good at the beginning. Winning the Ballon d'Or is a season-long achievement, okay? So he says that Vinicius only had a good start to the season, but then in the same sentence, he says the Ballon d'Or is about the whole season. What? So you yourself are contradicting you. You're contradicting yourself, because you're saying, oh, Vinicius only had a good start to the season, so he should win the Ballon d'Or, even though the Ballon d'Or is a full season-long competition. So wouldn't it make sense that Lamine should win it then because he was consistent the whole season versus Vinicius, who was only good at the beginning? I mean, again, this guy is just like, he really wanted us to remind us that, hey guys, if you forgot about me, I'm still here. I'm still an idiot. I'm still a moron. So here's your daily reminder. Now, this is the scary thing because look, dumb people exist everywhere, right? You just cannot avoid them. It just happens, right? There's more dumb people than there are smart people. But the problem is that this dumb person happens to run one of the biggest leagues in the world. And that's the scary part. Because one thing is to have a dumb neighbor who's just being dumb and not really bothering anyone. Maybe he frustrates you by saying his dumb shit. But no, this guy is running one of the biggest leagues in the world. And that's scary, guys. That's scary that someone this dumb could have so much power. That's very scary. But let's talk about more statements. These ones are not as funny, but it does show how this guy is just completely clueless. Now, speaking of Lamine and Vinicius, Javier Tebas continued by saying this. When they tell us that La Liga isn't signing players, they're not, by the way, I say that what we shouldn't do is waste. It's not that the clubs are not trying to waste, my friend. It's that they can't sign players because you're a moron who's run this league into the ground with his financial fair play. But anyways, let's continue. This shows that when you trust in young players, and in the case of Barcelona, we have it with Casado, who was injured, Cubarsí, Lamine Yamal, you see it there. There's no need to sign so many because many times you have the stars at home. So this guy runs this league into the ground with the worst financial fair play rules, which change every other week. He does such a horrible job that it gets to the point where clubs cannot sign players because let's not forget, people want to say, oh, La Liga's rigged. They keep going after Barcelona. No, this is not a problem that's only faced by Barcelona. Almost every club in La Liga cannot sign players because of this financial fair play. And not only can they not sign players, and as a result, all these players are going to the Premier, but they also cannot keep players because there's been a lot of players, up-and-coming players that will come up through the academy of these clubs, and the clubs cannot afford to keep them because of this financial fair play, so they end up leaving. So La Liga clubs not only can they not sign, they can't even keep their own players. Every summer, clubs like Real Betis, like Sevilla, like Valencia, they're having to offload like half their squad because they cannot register them. So this is a problem faced by all the clubs, and it's all thanks to this moron who has run this league into the ground. And instead of admitting that he's doing a terrible job, such a terrible job that these clubs cannot sign players, no. He tries to excuse it by saying, we don't need to sign. We have talent at home. I mean, this is next level incompetence. Not only is he doing a shitty job, but he's proud of his shitty job. And then he excuses his shitty job by saying, it's better not to sign because we have talent at home. My God. The president of La Liga, ladies and gentlemen. This is the guy running one of the biggest leagues in the world. Anyways, let's get back to the comment section, and then we are going to talk about your favorite defender, Clement Lenglet. And of course, I say that sarcastically. All right, let's do another generous donation from Carlos Vega, who says, hey, Mo, by the way, whatever happened to Thiago? Will he be mentoring our young team next season? Apparently not. So, Thiago. Flick really wanted Thiago Alcantara to come or to go to Barcelona. He didn't because he had just retired. By the way, what a shame. I think he retired too early. But I get it. Unfortunately, he was a very talented player, but unfortunately his career was marred by injuries. So that's why he decided to retire, which is an absolute shame, right? But he didn't want to go to Barcelona because, he had just retired. He wanted some time off. But Flick really convinced him, and then eventually Thiago was like, all right, I'll go, but it's only going to be for a few weeks, just the preseason. And then when the season starts, I'm out. So Thiago goes. The players love him. The staff love him. He's having a great time. So he decides, okay, I want to stay for longer. But then there was the whole tax situation where he got paid by Liverpool to rescind his contract, right? And for tax purposes, he needed to stay in the UK until the end of that year so the end of 2024, for tax purposes. So that's why he was like, all right, I want to stay longer, but I can't. So I'm going to go back to the UK to kind of like fulfill his tax obligation under UK law. So he did. Then came January, new year, 2025, and now he can go anywhere, right? Because that year is over. And Barcelona reached out to him and really tried to bring him back, but eventually he decided not to. So he's not coming. There are some talks about Thiago being offered coaching jobs, not like in a first division, I think like second or third division. And it looks like he could be considering that, or he might just want to be taking more time off. But he could be considering taking a coaching job somewhere. So it doesn't look like he's coming. It's a shame because it's reported that the players had really good relationship with him. So, all right, let's see what else. Jose Aguilar says, Mo, is it true that Barcelona will play a friendly match in Mexico at the end of the season? No truth to that. Right now, the only matches agreed to, they are friendly, are the 2 in Korea and the 1 in Japan. That's it. Now, whether eventually Mexico offers Barcelona money and Barcelona says, sure, we'll take it, that's a whole nother story. But as of today, no. There's only, 4 matches. 4 preseason matches agreed to. The 3 in Asia, and of course, the Joan Gamper Trophy, which marks the end of the preseason every season for Barcelona for a very, very long time. Clement Mensa says, Mo, Tebas never changes his mind when it comes to matters concerning Barca. He's a Madrid fan, and there's nothing to dispute that fact. I mean, look, he could be a Madrid fan. That's fine because obviously someone who works in the field of football, whether it's as part of La Liga, the Royal Spanish Football Federation, UEFA, FIFA, whatever, they're obviously going to be a football fan, right? Otherwise, you wouldn't go into the industry of football if you hated football, right? So obviously, you're going to be a football fan. And as a football fan, you're obviously going to prefer a team. You're going to have a team, right? And that's fine. That's human nature. But there's a difference between being a fan of a club versus constantly talking about that club and constantly trying to, shit on the rivals, because that's where you're like, all right, dude, what are you doing, right? Like, for example, if I become tomorrow the president of La Liga, I'm still going to be a Barca fan because I've been a Barca fan since I was a kid. But what you're not going to hear me saying is constantly talking about Barca. Oh, Barca's great. Barca this, Barca that. Because now I represent all 42 teams in La Liga in the first and second division. I don't just represent Barca. So I can't be, even though I am a Barca fan, you're not going to find me in public talking about, oh, Barca this and Barca that. Woohoo, Barca, let's go. No, because that's stupid, right? Because now you represent an entire league. So act like it. It's kind of like when you become a president of a country, right? Let's say you're from a certain city of that country and you're always like talking about my city's the best, blah, blah. When you become a president, you can't be saying that shit because now you represent an entire nation, not just the people from that city. So it's like you could be a fan of another club, just don't be an idiot. Like, you don't represent that club. You represent the entire league. So act like it. Act like you're actually representing the entire league, not just Real Madrid. Let's see. What else? Umaru says, hi, Mo. We, the Barcelona, I think he's meant hi, Mo. We, the Barcelona fans, need Nico Williams, agent from Sierra Leone, West Africa. I mean, what we need as fans doesn't really matter. It's what the team needs. But yes, I agree. We do need Nico Williams. I think he's the clear candidate. I mean, his chemistry with players like Pedri, like Olmo, like Lamine is, unlike anything else. The way he flourishes in the playing system of Spain, which is very similar to Barcelona's. I mean, come on. I mean, you talk about a guy who's proven himself in a system that's the same as Barcelona's with the players who also play for Barcelona. I mean, that doesn't get any clearer than that there's a really high possibility that he would play well for Barcelona. And it's funny because there was someone arguing with me in the context. They're like, we can't sign someone who just plays well with Spain. Look at what they do at Athletic Club. Blah. This is why we need to sign Lookman. I'm like, all right. Talking about a player who has proven that he can really do great things in a system that's the same as Barcelona's, surrounded with Barcelona players. And you're telling me that's not good enough, but a guy like Lookman, who, by the way, he would be a great addition too, and I really like him. But a player like Lookman, who plays in a completely different league, in a team that plays completely differently from Barcelona, with players who are completely different than Barcelona, that somehow is the better option. Like, where is the logic in that argument? Again, don't get me wrong. I'm not taking anything away from Lookman. I think Lookman will be a great addition too. But to say that because Nico only does well with Spain, that means we should pick Lookman. It's like, bro, if you prefer Lookman, that's fine. Just say so. But you don't have to make these like crazy mental gymnastic arguments just to prove your point. Just say I prefer Lookman. That's fine. I like Lookman too. Don't get me wrong. Klaus, my man Klaus says, what about Georges St. Pierre? GSP is a great fighter. Don't get me wrong. He was a great striker. But to me, I respect a little bit the grappling arts a little more than a striking. Because as someone who does both, grappling takes a lot more discipline and a lot more time to master, right? For example, if you were to go through jiu-jitsu, just jiu-jitsu, it would take you like 12 years, 14 years to go from white to black belt. There's only 5. There's only white, blue, purple, brown, and black, right? 12 to 14 years just to go through 5 belts, because it's a sport that takes so long to master because it's so intricate. Versus striking, you can pick up striking a lot faster. Doesn't mean, now I'm not saying that that striking is easy as hell and anybody could become a professional striker. Obviously not. But I feel like grappling takes a lot more to learn and to master, both physically, mentally, time-wise, than the striking arts. Now, don't get me wrong. I still love striking arts. I love Muay Thai. I think Muay Thai is an amazing sport. But because the grappling arts to me is a lot more difficult, more intricate, it takes a longer time to master. That's why I prefer Khabib, who's a grappler, over GSP, who was more of a striker. I don't know if that makes sense, but anyways. All right, let's get back to the news because we're not done. All right, let's talk about Clement Lenglet, everyone's favorite French center back. Of course, I'm kidding. I don't think he's anyone's favorite anything because he sucks. But Clement Lenglet is nearing his exit. Finally, this guy he's like a bad habit. You just cannot get rid of him. But finally, it looks like we are. Now, the bad news is that it looks like once again, we're going to be gifting a player to Atletico de Madrid, because Atletico de Madrid made it very clear since day one that they weren't going to pay a single penny for Clement Lenglet, that the only way they were going to sign him was if he was a free agent. And even though Barcelona tried as much as possible to try to get something, at least like 2 chickens and an egg for Clement Lenglet, Atletico de Madrid insisted that no. And with the help of Lenglet himself, who also said, I'm only going to Atletico and that's it, eventually, between the player and Atletico Madrid, they forced Barcelona's hand, and it looks like Barcelona will be rescinding the contract of Lenglet. Now, Barcelona had started negotiating with Lenglet the rescission of his contract a few days ago. I reported that in a previous video. And now the reports are saying that these negotiations are in a very, very advanced stages. They are nearly finalized. So it looks like Lenglet should be leaving the club pretty soon. Maybe this weekend, maybe by next Monday, because after all, Atletico Madrid need to sign Lenglet because they want to take him to the Club World Cup, which is right around the corner. Now, of course, this is bad news since Barcelona were not able to make any money for him. But on the other hand, the silver lining is that Barcelona will be able to remove a huge salary that's haunted them for a very, very long time, because Lenglet was one of those players that Bartomeu renewed right before he resigned. It was kind of like his last big FU to Barcelona. It was like, here, I'm going to renew this guy till 2026. And then he resigned and bounced. And of course, when Lenglet went on loan to Tottenham, when Lenglet went to, was it Aston Villa? I'm forgetting, this guy's bounced around so much. I think it was Aston Villa. But Barcelona still had to pay for, I think it was half his salary, because his salary was so big. I think it's like 16 million euros. So this is a salary that Barcelona has had to pay for a while. Even now, Atletico Madrid, the last season, Barcelona still had to pay part of his salary. So finally, Barcelona will be able to get rid of Lenglet, someone who's been trying years to get rid of. And they're going to be able to remove his huge salary off their books. And that, of course, will open up space to register other players For example, Joan Garcia. Anyways, that is the news. It looks like Barcelona will be gifting another player to Atletico Madrid, but silver lining is we finally get rid of Clement Lenglet. Let's see. Mikael Young says, "What up, Mo? Ever since I heard about the move for Lookman, I feel this is a hidden blessing as it is affordable and he has shown real quality. Also, if we get a player who can play left back and right back and Juan Garcia. So I don't think we need left back or right backs. I mean, we saw that to me, Kunde is one of the best right backs in Europe. And I think Eddie Garcia has shown time and time again towards the end of the season that he's more than capable of being Kunde's sub. And then you have Hector Ford. Hector Ford still has a lot of work to do. He showed a lot of potential as far as his attacking, but his defending is very, very lacking. But that's okay because he still has Kunde and Eric that can play there as he grows and matures and develops. As far as the left, we have Ballon. We have Gerard Martin, whom I'm not fully convinced on him, but Flick seems to like him. And I think Gerard Martin against mid to bottom table teams, he's a really good option. I wouldn't play him against Madrid or in the Champions League, even though they did do well. But Flick likes him. And then, of course, we have Jofre Torrens, right? So we also have 3 people for the left back. So I don't think we need any fullbacks, and that's why Barcelona have decided not to sign any fullbacks for those same reasons. But as far as Lookman, yeah, I think Lookman would be a good option. But I still prefer Nico because Nico has already played in La Liga. Lookman hasn't. So Lookman would have to adjust to La Liga where Nico wouldn't because he's been in La Liga his whole life. Also, Nico would fit in Barcelona's system because the Spain system is the same, and Nico William already flourishes with Spain, where Lookman would then have to, adjust to Barca's system. And then Nico already plays with many of the Barcelona players on the Spanish national team, where Lookman would have to adjust to his new teammates. So again, I like Lookman option a lot. If we get Lookman, I would be very happy. I'm not knocking the guy down, but I would prefer Nico for those reasons because Lookman would have to adjust to his teammates and his new teammates, to a new league, to a new system, where Nico wouldn't have to do anything of that. Nico on day one, he would be able to start and be like, all right, let's go. I got this. So that's why I would prefer Nico. Plus, again, we're talking about building a young team for a very long time, right? We're not looking for building a team for 2-3 seasons. We're looking at the long term. So it makes more sense to sign Nico, who's 22, versus Luis Diaz, who's 28, or Rashford, who's 27, or Lookman, who's 27. Right? So, but again, if we got Lookman, I'm not going to be like, oh my God, I can't believe we got this guy. I think he's a good option too, but I do prefer Nico. Let's see. Where do we leave off? X-Ray says, Vivid, all he does is cry. I see it's in, I think you mean Vinicius. And yes, I mean, I guess if they do hand out Ballon d'Ors for cry babies, Vinicius would win every year. I mean, the cry d'or, I don't know, maybe the tear d'or. Wait, what is tear in French? Tear in French. Larme. Larme d'or. How about that? Huh? Tear. Larme. Larme. I'm hitting the speaker button on Google. So, Larme d'or. There you go. The tear, the golden tear. I think if that award existed, Vinicius would clean house. I mean, every year it would get to the point where you didn't even need to hold the ceremony. It would just be Vinicius. Just ship it to him. But unfortunately for him, that award does not exist yet. So he's just going to have to sit his ass down one more time. And Mikael Young says, I'm sure even Snoop Dogg might want to know what stash Tebas got after that statement. I don't even think he even can justify Tebas' statements with drugs, because I've heard very, very high and drunk people make a lot more sense than what Tebas says when he's sober. So I don't even think you can blame drugs or alcohol for what the things that Tebas says, because I mean, that's next level stupid. But anyways, let's do the last bit of news. The last bit of news, which is in regards to Pablo Torre, who has made a statement. He's currently with the Spanish under-21 squad. And he was interviewed. He was asked about his season, and he kind of revealed his frustrations a little bit with the season for not getting minutes. And for some reason or other, people have taken it out of context. There's been a lot of uproar, like, oh my God, Pablo Torre disrespected Flick, spitting in his face, spitting on his mother's grave. what the hell is wrong with this guy? And I don't think he did any of that. But let's look at the statements, and you guys tell me whether this was truly a diss track against, Flick, because that's what some people are making out seem to be. Like, this is Kendrick Lamar versus Drake. But this is what Pablo Torre had to say about his season. I think I could have played many more minutes. I think I earned them. There was a lot of competition, and it was difficult to get in. But I think that also on that part, it was not fair. And I told him, Flick, obviously talking about Flick. So in a talk I had with him, these are things that the coach chooses. It's true that there were no injuries, and so it's also very difficult for him to choose. I respect their decisions, but many times I have not understood them. So Pablo Torre kind of saying, he feels like based on a few minutes that he did get, that he deserved to play more, but Flick didn't give it to him, and he doesn't understand that decision, but at the same time, he respects it. And again, that has been a little bit taken out of context, and people made it seem like, Pablo Torre is just pissed all over Flick. And I don't think that's the case because, A, he's not dissing Flick by any way, saying, his decision doesn't make sense. What is he doing? What is he thinking? Blah, blah, blah. He's simply saying, look, I want to play more. It didn't happen. I respect that. And that's key because he's saying, look, I don't agree with the decision, but I respect it. After all, it's the coach who decides. So, I think it's totally fine. Second reason why I don't think there's anything wrong with these statements is because he says he had already talked to Flick about this. So this is not like the case where now Flick is all of a sudden having to find out from the press that Pablo Torres, is frustrated. No, Pablo Torre took it to him first, and now he's just telling the press that he talked to Flick about it, which, again, nothing wrong with that. It's different had he not said anything, and now Flick is sitting there reading the paper like, this motherfucker never said anything to me. Now I got to find out from the newspaper. Or had he told Flick one thing and then he goes says another thing on the press. That would be a problem. And then finally, he says that he understands the situation. Again, he's not just like, oh, I want more minutes. Fuck Barca, I deserve them. He's like, look, I wanted to play more, but I also understand there's a lot of competition. So, it is what it is. So I don't think this was anything wrong with these statements. I don't think Pablo Torre is dissing Flick or anything like that. He's simply reflecting on the reality of the situation. And that is he wanted more minutes. He didn't get them. He was disappointed he didn't get them, but he respects the decision of not getting them. And he understands why he didn't get them in the first place, because simply there's a lot of competition. There's a million midfielders, and, it's hard to get minutes when there's so many people fighting for the same spot. So those are the statements of Pablo Torre. You guys let me know, what do you think? Is this truly, Kendrick Lamar versus Drake, or is this just Pablo Torre reflecting on the reality of his season? By the way, we still don't know what's going to happen with him. I really hope that Barcelona send him on loan, because Pablo Torre obviously he shows potential to be a good midfielder, but obviously he's not there yet. And in order to get there, he needs minutes. And at Barcelona, he's not going to get those minutes because there are people who are already there, right? So if Pablo Torre is right here, he has potential to be here. But in order to get here, he needs minutes. But he's not going to get minutes at Barcelona because there are already midfielders at Barcelona who are here. So Flick is not going to risk putting a midfielder who's down here in hopes that he gets up here when he already has midfielders who play up here. So I think the best thing to do is send Pablo Torre to loan. Let him get the minutes, let him develop, let him get better so he can get up here. And then when he comes back to Barcelona, since he is now at the level where he's supposed to be, then Flick, I'm sure, will give him more minutes. Mantamante says Dutch commentators call him just Mbappe. I think I like Mbappe. Okay, he truly is the king of penalties. Argentina final, he scored, 2 penalties? All the Clásicos mostly were penalties. Yesterday, soft-ass penalty on, was it Dembélé? That gets fouled. Oh, by the way, another funny thing about yesterday's France elimination at the hands of Spain is we all remembered the semifinals of the Euros, right? Where Rabiot was talking shit about Lamine, and then Lamine scores the winning goal in the face of Rabiot and kind of like ends the whole thing by saying this, like, talk more, right? Not only does he shut him up in the most epic way, scoring amazing goal in his face, and eliminating France out of a Euros, but then he eliminates France again in the semifinal, this time in Nations League, and Lamine scores a goal as a result of Rabiot fouling him in the penalty box, and Lamine gets the penalty kick. So at this point, I mean, if I was Rabiot, I would just quit football. I'd be like, fuck it, that's it. Like, this 17-year-old kid has humiliated me twice. I mean, it's time to call it quits. It's time to play, I don't know, pickleball, something. But it's pretty embarrassing. I'm like embarrassed for him. Jose Aguilar says Chelsea trying to swap Nkunku for Fermin is absolutely wild. I agree. And Klaus says Nico 100% for me. I also agree, my friend. I also agree. And Kara King says Nico is the best option for Barca at the moment. Money is tight and quality is expensive, so he could be a steal of the deal. I agree. I think Nico could be like another Joan Garcia, right? You have Joan Garcia, 24 years old, pretty young, promising, lots of potential, and he has a clause of 25 million. And it gets to the point where you're like, all right, I'm not looking for goalkeepers, but shit, look at this guy. He's young, he's amazing, and he's only 25. I cannot pass that up. Even if I wasn't planning to sign a goalkeeper, now I have to, because passing such a good opportunity would be pretty stupid. So I think the Nico situation is the same, where, yeah, still, obviously, Nico's release cost 58 million, way higher than Joan Garcia's, but still, we're talking about a 22-year-old left winger, which is what we need, who plays amazing with my team players, Lamine, Pedri, Olmo, etc., and would fit like a glove, and you're like, all right, we have to do it. Because if Nico Williams leaves Athletic Bilbao to some other club and Barcelona try to sign him next summer, they're going to want 120 for him. Maybe 100, maybe 90. But they're not going to sell it to you for 58, which is his current release clause. So this is like the Joan Garcia opportunity where you're like, all right, I have to go for him, because right now that's what attackers are fetching for. Especially attackers that age. 120 mil, 100 mil, 90 mil, 80 mil, and to be able to get someone for 58, who again is 22. They're asking for 85 for Luis Diaz, who's 27 or 28. This guy's 22 and it's 58. Like, we cannot pass that opportunity. Mahmoud says, hey, Mo, it seems AC Milan are willing to listen to offers for around 70 mil for Leao. That's not true. Now that they signed Massimiliano Allegri, he wants to keep Leao. That was the case before they signed Max Allegri as their coach. Now Max Allegri is like, Leao is untouchable. I want to keep him. Mari says, the sooner Lenglet leave, the better. His ridiculous wages. He's never going to play a Barca team. Hope this will be the last gift to Atletico Madrid. I hope so too, but we've given him way too much. We signed Griezmann for, 135 or something like that, and then we sold him back for 25. I mean, it's kind of like we just withdrew 100 and some million and we're like, here, take this money. Why? Just take it. I don't want it. Suarez, we gave it to them for free. Villa, now Lenglet. I mean, what the hell, man? Mo Fadeaway says, thoughts on De La Fuente picking Cucu over Balde and sticking with Porro. Do you think he is making a big mistake? I think Porro got smoked left and right. And I think De La Fuente probably realized his mistake, because Balde is undoubtedly right now the best left back in Spain, like by far, one of the best in Europe. And to not include him was probably the dumbest thing De La Fuente did. And I'm sure he noticed it, because I don't know, Porro was getting smoked, man. Now Porro does play on the right, but Cucurella didn't do much better either. He had a few saves here and there, but I don't know. I don't know what De La Fuente was thinking, excluding Balde. But anyways. Samson says, Mo, remember when I told you as a true Barca fan, you have to accept that Raphinha performed better for Barcelona over Lamine, but I'll be happy if either of them wins the Ballon d'Or. Wait, you have to accept that Raphinha performed better for Barca. Okay. Did Raphinha perform better than Lamine? Well, you have to define better. If you're talking about numbers, yeah, Raphinha has better numbers. But Who had more impact on the team, Raphinha or Lamine? I think it was Lamine. I think Lamine was he was the difference maker in most matches. I think I'm not knocking down Raphinha or anything. I think Raphinha had an amazing season, but Lamine just has more impact on matches. Raphinha is the kind of player who, if the team is doing great, he does amazing, as we've seen. But if the team is not doing well, Raphinha kind of disappears. Same with Lewandowski, right? 42 goals. But if the team is not doing well, Lewandowski also kind of like just disappears. Lamine is the kind of player where if the team is doing bad, he says, don't worry, just give me the ball and I'll make things work. And we saw it time and time again. Inter Milan, right? We saw it in the semifinal. So that's the difference for me. You know, Raphinha needs his teammates for him to do great. And don't get me wrong, he's done amazing. But Lamine is that kind of player that even when the team is doing bad, he says, I'm going to change things up. He makes all the difference. Raphinha is not that kind of player. And that's not saying anything bad about Raphinha, because most players are not that kind of player. You know, the kind of players who can change it up, who can make all the difference, those are very few in the world. I mean, these guys are blessed by like a magic stick. And no, I'm not talking about 50-cent stick. I'm talking about an actual magic stick. Ross Noor says, hey, Mo, first, how are you? Second, do you think we should even pursue players from PSG? I really like their left winger, the Doué kid. I'm doing well, my friend. Thank you for asking. I hope you're doing well, too. Doué is not going to happen. Doué is an amazing player, but PSG selling Doué is like Barcelona selling Lamine. It's just not going to happen. He's their gem right now. Young player with lots of potential, who's going to give them many, many years of success. Same thing with Lamine for Barca. Barca not going to sell him. PSG are not going to sell him. Barca not going to sell Lamine. PSG not going to sell Doué. Unless somehow in 2-3 seasons, Doué says, fuck this, I want to go, and forces his way out. But right now, he's not going to go anywhere. GT Maestro says, granted, Rashford is a diva, but I believe he'd fall in line at Barca. There was considered Luis Suarez after his antics when we signed him. He came and left that life behind. Yeah, there's always that possibility, but there's also the possibility that he does it. You know, so that's the thing. Do you want to gamble? I mean, can I flip a coin? I mean, it's like I'd rather not sign someone who's a diva, because you don't have to worry about whether they're gonna leave that life behind or not, right? That makes more sense, right? Nico, Lookman, they're not divas, so you don't have to worry about, is Lookman, when he comes, is he gonna remain a diva or is he gonna stop being a diva? No, because he's not a diva, so you don't have to worry about that. So I think that's a better option. Let's see. Where else? Loco Motive says, I feel like Raphinha. Who's Raphinha, man? It's Coutinho, bro. It's fucking Coutinho, man. I feel like Raphinha would make a good striker. He's good with headers and finishing. He's great in making runs behind the defenders. Raphinha is good combining with his teammates, right? Because since he doesn't have that 1v1 skill, that dribbling skill, whenever he gets the ball, if he doesn't have the space to run with it, he always likes to do a quick first touch pass, right? Because he needs the space. So as someone who can combine well with his teammates and do those first touch passes and make runs from the second line, he's better, I think, as an attacking midfielder than as a striker. Because a striker has to have a really incredible finishing ability, which Raphinha doesn't necessarily have. I'm not saying he's not a good finisher. Obviously, to score 34 goals, you have to be able to finish. But there's been a lot of times when he was 1v1 the goalkeeper and just missed, like badly, because he doesn't have that killer instinct of a natural center forward. You know, a center forward position is like the goalkeeper position. There are two positions where you got to have this special killer mentality or killer instinct in you. And that's something that cannot be taught, right? Some things you can teach midfielders. There's some things you can teach defenders. Some things you can teach wingers. But center forwards and goalkeepers have to have that killer instinct where if you don't have it, you can learn everything else, how to dribble, pass, control, whatever. If you don't have that killer instinct, you're not going to be good. The center forward, you have to have that killer instinct of knowing where to be at the right time, at the right moment. Like Lewandowski, a lot of people would be like, oh, he scores goals just by tapping. Yeah, but why was he able to tap those balls? Because he was able to read the entire play and predict exactly not only where the pass was going to be, but a lot of times predict where the rebound was going to be. Because that's what defines a center forward, is that ability, that killer instinct of knowing where to be at the right time, at the right place. Even if it's a tapping, he had to envision that to be there for the tapping. And that's a very difficult thing to do. Goalkeepers, you just have to have, ice running through your veins, because when you come out of your line and you're 1v1 with an attacker, or when you're running to grab a ball in the air and everybody else is jumping and you can, or when a player is coming at you and you just dive to cover the ball and risking that they can just kick the shit out of your head, like, you have to have ice in your veins. And those, like, that killer instincts that goalkeeper have, that mentality of Mia versus the world, because they really are versus the world. The rest of the team, you can't play with your teammates. You have players that cover your back. Goalkeeper is alone. Goalkeeper is nobody helping him. Like, that's it. You're the last stop. So that killer instinct in goalkeepers and center forwards is not something you can teach. And players either have it or they don't. And that's why it's so hard to find center forwards these days. Like a typical center forward, like a Robert Lewandowski kind of center forward, that's a dying breed, man. Orion says, Mo, what do you think about Gittins for the rumored price of 30 mil plus add-ons? It's been rumored in the past. Deco's a fan of the player. I think he is a good market opportunity at the price. I haven't heard anything about Barcelona being interested in him. So not as far as I know. Maybe, I don't know if I missed it, but I haven't heard anything. Kara King says, the team without Raphinha is so much different than a team without Lamine. Not taking anything from Raphinha, but Barca without Lamine gets kind of flat. I agree. Morrison says, Mo, please tell Barcelona to bring Nico Williams, not Rashford. I mean, if I could, and if they listen to me, I would. But unfortunately, I don't have that power. But if any of you want to, introduce me to Laporta or to Deco, please do. But he probably won't like me. I've criticized them a lot. They're probably going to be like, fuck this guy. Anyways, that is all, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you so much for tuning in. Thank you for your comments, your likes, your subscriptions, your donations. If you haven't hit the like button yet, make sure you do. And if you haven't subscribed yet, make sure you do. And if you haven't dropped a comment yet, make sure you do, because I want to hear you guys' thoughts and opinions, and not about how Barcelona are going to spend 85 million euros on Luis Diaz. Anyways, thank you guys for watching. No more videos tonight. That's it. That was all the news today coming out of Barcelona. So we'll see you guys in tomorrow's videos. And as always, Viscarsa.